That's for taking a running jump, is it?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be on my best behaviour tonight, Councillor Hayfield, unless you prompt me to.
Far be it from me.
We can start. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Planning and Development Board. As usual, we are not expecting any fire alarms, so if you hear the sounder, it will be most likely a real event. Please leave the building by the nearest safest exit, which is likely to be that door, and stand outside in the car park just behind those windows at assembly point G, and wait there until tonight's proper officer, Mr. Tobin, says it is safe to do otherwise. Please don't just go home, because we'll have firemen looking all over the building for you. Just for absence or members away on official council business. Mr. Tobin.
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Bell, substitute tonight, Councillor Marley Parker. Apologies from Councillor Tony Clues, substitute tonight, Councillor Marion Humphreys. Apologies from Councillor Hayden Phillips, substitute of Councillor Farrow.
Councillor Farrow also sends her apologies.
Right,
She's not
I was
very
going
well.
to say that was the.
Yeah, no, she's really poorly.
And then have
Councillor Parsons.
Sorry, as I say, we have apologies from also Councillor Moss and Councillor Parsons, but no apologies. No substitutes have been nominated in their place.
So, members, are you content with those apologies? You're happy to note them?
Noted.
Councillor Mrs. Humphreys, no stranger to the planning board, so welcome back. Councillor Parker, your first time.
Yes.
Welcome. I hope you find it as fascinating as the rest of us do.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? No, thanks very much. So we now move on to agenda item 4, which is minutes of the meeting of the board held on the 7th September, which I think you all remember went through full council last week. Are you content I signed them as a true and correct record?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 5 is the Lichfield District Council local plan for the period up to 2040, which is going through consultation.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair. I won't go through the report, obviously that's in front of you, but the principal points raised in the report reflect the housing increase, which is there seeking to be 9,727, of which 2,665 is directly contributing to the GBBHMA wider unmet need. There are a number of issues we picked up that we feel are important. Obviously, I'm more than happy to accommodate any changes, amendments, or additional comments from members. But the two major concerns, one was in relation to no clear indication of how they were going to address the identified Egyptian traveller need. These are issues that arose similar to our own local plan inquiry in the last couple of years. So there was that point and the need to identify how they were going to progress that, possibly through an Egyptian traveller DD. The second area was in relation to the 85 hectares of employment land identified within the Lichfield area. There was, we believe, a need to include, similar to the North Warwickshire local plan, a regional or sub-regional policy to address basically the pressure that we are similarly under for employment, primarily B8, as members are aware. We don't believe that is an omission that the plan should continue with, and they should be looking at including a specific policy within the plan to address that. Currently, there is a sub-regional study going on, and that would hopefully help contribute towards such a policy, or at least inform such a policy. So that we believe there is an omission. In terms of direct implications for North Warwickshire, it's slightly more difficult to assess. But the major proposal is one at Paisley Mile End to the west, just off the A453 off Hinks Road and Sutton Road. That's an 800 house development split between Richborough and Laws. That's 500 and 300 respectively. There has been a transport assessment, but it is fairly old on that site. We are aware that there are issues with that junction, but the proposal does include some improvements to that proposal, as well as to the bridge over the A5, which is the current, it's the westbound slip road from the A453 on the eastern feeding that leads down to Tamworth itself. That has been identified as in need for additional improvements, including the traffic gyratory and traffic control junction to help avoid queuing. But that information is still with National Highways, so we do not know whether they are happy with that or not. And it includes the widening of the bridge across the A5, current bridge. So that is an issue still outstanding. Those are the main points we've raised so far, but I'm happy to take questions or to add any additional concerns from members to you feel we need to.
Councillor Hayfield?
I haven't seen the plan in detail. I've got the play roll from what you've done in the report. I don't know how the housing or industrial areas will be distributed, whether it's going to be the North Warwickshire side of Lichfield or not. But I'm concerned that any development on any scale, even though it's not immediately touching on North Warwickshire, will have an impact on the infrastructure, particularly the A5. And I just wonder if you've got any more specific thoughts on that, or whether you can. And I don't know whether other members will share my concerns on that. But I think we should put a marker down, because we know what the pressures are like on the A5, and any additional developments and things that will have an impact on that locally will have an impact consequentially on North Warwickshire.
If you don't mind, Mr. Dutton, we'll go around the room and bash you collectively rather than individually. Councillor Riley?
Yeah, I totally support Mike, what Colin has said. I'd add the 4091, which is the road from the Belfry to Paisley, and specifically the HS2 works that are going to be done for the junction at Bodymore Heath Lane. We already know that junction is number 5 in the most dangerous junctions in North Warwickshire, having had 3 fatalities. So if we are talking about an increase in traffic down there, could we please ask somebody just to have a look at the 4091 and any opportunities? The second one is that they're offset through. So throughout our local plan, we have Tame Valley Wetland Partnership reference, and clearly at Paisley and also into Tamworth along the anchor. We have obviously Tame Valley Wetland Partnership areas. So I don't know whether they're not having read it. I don't know whether the commitments that are made in the North Warwickshire plan can be extended into the Lichfield plan.
Councillor Humphries?
Yeah, Mr. Nittman's referred to everything on the A5 side or on of Tamworth, but the B4538, which used to be the A438, goes from Tamworth to Ashby. And Lichfield, believe it or not, comes all the way down to that particular road. And what is now known as Arkle Farm is going to have 3,300 houses built on there. That goes all the way from on that Arkle Farm from the Ashby Tamworth Road all the way up to the Wigginton. So it's a massive increase on that side. Also, I am very aware that their planners and also us as planners can only look at what's put in front of us. But when you come down the 4538 to go into Tamworth, on the left-hand side, Tamworth are building 750 houses on that side. It's in an inundation of private housing that's taking place. Now, I know the Arkle Farm site, 3,300 houses. It's going to be 10 or 12 years to actually do that. But that's recently, while they've been breaking into with the first phase of the first couple of hundred houses, They've just broken into the main sewers and the electrics, and they've closed that road for a while. The flooding of people finding different ways to avoid using the Ashby Road because it was closed for 8 weeks shows you where the traffic can go. In places through Shuttington, Ostry, Newton Regis, but loads and loads of people trying to get to work, etc. So I'll be very interested to know what they're going to do or the pressures that's going to come on. I also worry about it's so close to us. What will it have an effect in terms of where children go to school? 3,300 houses. Some of those people may move from here, may move out of Tamworth, and they're already have children ensconced in schools. I'd just be very interested to see how much pressure will come on that. So I would ask if you could find some. Thank you.
Councillor David.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly support what you're saying there. That is a huge development. You've only just got to look over from the Ashby Road and you're looking into North Warwickshire. It's so close to us. So far, we've heard quite a lot about the additional housing that is mentioned in this plan. But we have to remember that it isn't just the housing, it's the employment land that is going with it as well. There's a lot of commercial development going in along there. Most of it will sort of drain onto the A5 and the junction with the M42, which, again, North Warwickshire, the cumulative effect of all the traffic from those houses and the commercial development is huge. And I think we need to make sure that that is not forgotten. We have problems with the A5 now. They cannot be improved by what we're hearing is coming along in this plan. I think we need to really push that point with our responses.
Councillor Hancock.
I think furthering the point, I think at the moment we're going through a consultation on the A5 improvement plan at Dordon, Atherstone, Holmesworth area. My concern is that this is pointless because no matter what we agree to now, in 2-3 years' time, we're going to be having the same conversations at the A5, even with the improvements, can't take our housing because of the housing around us. So it is a real big issue that we need to concentrate on. If they're going with the local plan, the A5 has to be, in anybody's plan, it has to be an important part of improvement.
Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting to note as well that we need to consider gypsy and traveller sites. The problems we've had recently in Tackle, they need to at least provide some pitches for them to do as well as ourselves. So that's most important.
Sorry, Councillor.
Just a small point, kind of picking up on what has already been said, but it's an opportunity as well to kind of get those safer roads. So the dangerous junctions really need to be highlighted in this plan, and also I think an understanding of kind of now we've got kind of more pieces of the jigsaw coming into play of what kind of holistically it's going to look like for the A5, because that is crucial not only to the kind of success and the vibrancy of our area and the transport links, but also it has huge impacts on our own local plan and whether or not that's deliverable, which we've kind of discussed quite a lot in previous meetings. But now that this is coming to the forefront, we've got Tamworth and other things, it would be really good to kind of reflect on what the overall plan looks like and what the implications are going to look like and where are going to be the holes and the gaps and where we might kind of get caught in.
And from my perspective, just a couple of points really. I think members have absolutely raised a very valid point in respect to the A5. Equally, traffic from Litchfield could go down the A38 and then on to other roads going into North Warwickshire. So I think any traffic that's really going south or east or west to an extent from Litchfield and their 10,000 new houses at some point will hit North Warwickshire. And so I think I haven't seen in your notes so far any real consideration of how that's going to affect our borough. Equally, as Councillor Lawson said, the need for gypsy and traveller accommodation, proposing 7. In 2018, North Warwickshire had a population of just over 65,000. Lichfield had a population of just under 105,000. In this draft plan, as a neighbour, is Lichfield pulling their weight? Are they properly addressing the needs of the region in the way that other local authorities are trying to do? So to my mind, it's a twin-sided approach. What is the impact of the proposals on us, particularly as far as traffic and gypsum travel sites are concerned? And also, within the greater scheme of things, I note in your report, you said the allocation and delivery of this housing is supported. Are there any additional efforts to address the Greater Birmingham unmet needs would be encouraged? With bells on, I think, Mr. Dittman. Any other comments before Mr. Dittman responds? Mr. Dittman.
Thanks, Chair. No, those, I will include those points and comments raised. They are all relevant. The only areas that I would have some concerns over is with some of the proposals in relation to Arkle Farm. I will word those in terms of seeking further information, because that's what we don't know. This particular plan isn't identifying anything up that side of the corridor or onto the Ashby Road. So to some extent, we're arguing against sites and proposals that have already been agreed and effectively are being over time implemented. So that is an issue more on the lack of, and I agree wholeheartedly on this, the lack of information from Staffordshire County Highways Transport. They have an old 29 survey that was because of the COVID circumstance. I'm aware that has been deferred for an update. So that could be an additional pressure to get that update reviewed ASAP. And their current strategic transport strategy is pretty old. So there is that issue. The only area I do notice that they did refer to in terms of objections to the plan, this is Staffordshire County Council Highways, was in relation to the implications of HS2. So that factors in quite nicely with what Councillor Riley said. So I will definitely bump that on and see if we can get a little bit more response. And we'll go from there. The difficulty with the Gypsy traveller situation is this is the same Gypsy travellers accommodation assessment that we were involved in. So I need to be careful in terms of how I respond, because it's the same evidence base upon which we based our local plan. So we will need to be careful in terms of how we, if not raise an objection, at least seek additional information. Part of the problem we always face with North Warwickshire is that in comparison to Tamworth and Lichfield, they have fewer sites. So when you do an assessment on fewer sites, you inevitably end up with fewer requirements. And that is a difficulty we are facing. But yes, I can factor that in to the reps quite easily, I think.
And that really is the nub of the problem, isn't it? You have some, so you get more. If you have less, you get less. And it's like trying to do the right thing and put you in the worst position. Gents, I can't remember who was first. Sorry. We'll go with Councillor Riley first because it was him second last time.
Mike, obviously not having done the plan, does it make any commitments to Pooley Park in it?
Oh, sorry, Councillor, I didn't. No, it doesn't make any specific. It says as far as the 800 development at Paisley goes, they are looking to provide Country Park as part of it, an element of Country Park open space with a primary school, basically a village hall type centre, some additional shopping. So there are infrastructure requirements. They will still be faced with Section 106 requirements. This is to do with secondary education. It's a very similar circumstance to Roby's Lane development we have with ours, where they're having to work quite closely with Tamworth. And Tamworth do have concern because the majority of the traffic and the implications for them will be going into their town centre towards venture part of the town centre and Wilnecote direction as well. So there are obviously issues, probably more direct issues from them. It is something that I hadn't picked up on, so I will add that and go back to the plan before we respond and look if there is any opportunities. They do have general policies that enable us to seek linkages. We are looking for much closer linkages with the open space and the cycle links into Tamworth. So if we can do that similarly to the Tame Valley partnership, because the area of that partnership that also extends, and I've forgotten what the extension is into Staffordshire, but there's an element of it that extends into Staffordshire North. We can hopefully link into that because that is all part of the same natural corridor that is being promoted. I think it's it may be the Three Rivers.
Reason.
So I'll link it into that. So that's an area that I hadn't picked up on, but I will do now.
Councillor Hayfield?
I was going to sort of move us on by moving the recommendation. I'm looking at it, I realise that recommendation A makes sense to be moved. Recommendation B doesn't quite. We need just a change of wording somehow. Mr. Tobin can advise to say that we have commented and ask that those comments be considered as part of that.
Absolutely. I think simply, A is as it said, and B is, and additional comments raised by members tonight.
I've incorporated or whatever it is. Yeah. So if that is taken as an amendment, I'll move the recommendation A and amended B.
Do we have a second? 2, 3? They're all seconding it. So thank you. All those in favour? Any against? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Mr. Tobin, if you have a thought draw that needs your urgent attention, you're more than welcome to leave us. Otherwise, you can stay all night long.
Thank you very much. I think I will
Members, we now move on to the consideration of the planning applications before site. The first one is a consultation at Paxton Lane, Paxton landfill site, Causal. Mr. Brown, anything to add to your report?
And to the first of all, Mr. Chairman, just get the plan. This is replicated in the papers you have in front of you. The Packington area is here, as you can see, the land raising of the land here with the road down here. Packington Lane is on this side, on the right-hand side, and the three areas are marked here with three blobs here, corresponding to the application numbers. All access is off the link road into the NEC. I've got nothing further to add, Mr. Chairman, in terms of planning consequences.
Councillor Hayfield?
I think it's fairly straightforward. I've had no real complaints about the operation of the site to date. I'm happy to move the recommendation. But is there any way we can take an opportunity to remind them yet again about the litter issues that occur within the larger curtilage of their interests?
I think that's very reasonable, Mr. Brown. Are you happy to take that on board?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll have to ask the county, and I can do it myself as well, because obviously this is a county-council consultation. I'll have to get in touch with sewers directly on that. I'll ask the county to do similarly as well.
So I'm happy to move the recommendation with that little caveat.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Councillor. All those in favour? Any against? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move to application number 687 for enforcement action at 89 to 91 Manor, Austria. Anything to add to your report, Mr. Brown?
The plan's up there, Mr. Chair, and members are familiar with this. If this follows on from the refusal of Planning Commission at the last meeting, the update I have to give you, Mr. Chairman, and it's referred to in the report, is that a planning appeal has now been lodged with the Secretary of State. The timetable for that will obviously be determined by the planning inspectorate. They've asked for exchange of written representations, so therefore that planning appeal will take several months, I suspect, to run through. It doesn't prevent you from taking a decision on the expediency of enforcement action. The report outlines all the options that are available to you, and if you do elect to serve a notice, it also outlines the considerations which you should consider. I've got nothing further to add to the recommendations, Chairman.
And Mr. Brown, you're recommending that the compliance period would be the 31st of October, but no doubt that will be extended until after the appeal has been heard.
No, Mr. Chairman. The enforcement notice stands as a separate document. So therefore, if an appeal is lodged against the enforcement notice, they may well argue that it should be extended, but that's a matter for the enforcement appeal, not for the planning appeal.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions or comments?
Move the recommendation, Chair.
The second. Thank you very much. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We move to application number 462, the Office Public House, Church Road, Wharton, which, as you remember, is also coming back to us from a previous meeting. Anything to add, Mr. Brown?
No, Mr. Chairman, the plans are the same as that you've seen before. Following the approval last time round, there's been further investigation in terms of noise impacts. And as you can see, that has resulted in this application to vary the conditions on the mitigation measures, which is supported by the noise consultant and also your environmental health officers.
And will there be a revised plan attached, noting, because I think last time when we were talking about the angle of the seating and
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. The main plan will be to indicate exactly where the mitigation measures should take place, but that can be resolved, yes, Mr. Chairman.
I think members last time were concerned that it should be capable.
They were.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Members, any comments, questions?
Just to clarify, does that still allow outside music?
There are conditions already.
I'm just trying to read it.
The previous one, Mr. Chairman. It's condition 3 relates to hours of noise, and condition 8 relates to no recorded or live music to be played on the site.
Thank you.
That just begs the question, Mr. Brown. Does the site is the site in question solely the external area?
The site is the application site, not the offices, the public house as a whole. That is subject to the conditions which are on the licence. The condition which I just referred to relates to this particular planning application site. In other words, the extension to the beer garden.
So I'm confused. Does this mean they can't have a jukebox or a music machine inside the club?
On that application site, no, they can't.
So in the public they can.
In the public can, but not on this particular part of the site.
But it's an extension of the site, isn't it? It's an extension of the beer garden.
Okay, again, I just want to be sure that we will be reasonably clear. Okay, any other questions?
No, somebody move that. I'm happy to move that.
And seconder? Thanks very much. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you very much. The next item is application number 22 for Causal Manor Campus South Drive, Causal. Mr. Brown.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You actually requested this report because it's a non-material amendment, and those aren't normally referred to planning board. As you can see from the report, this seeks some amendments to an approved scheme. That scheme has already been approved under delegated powers, and the chairman asked for this particular report to come to you because of the significance of the actual application or proposal within the borough, not necessarily the amendments. Just to run through the slides, Mr. Chairman, this is what was approved. The lagoon with the arch-shaped building, as you can see at the northern end, which is to contain all the functions. And the approved elevations are literally a monopitched building, as you can see, around the arc, but with a continuous roof. And now what is proposed is a split. They want two particular buildings with a glazed entrance block or a glazed link between the two, such that when you come into the car park and into the building, you can actually look through and immediately see the water and the waves on the lagoon. And in terms of elevations, again, they're a bit foreshortened, Mr. Chairman, because of the arc involved in the actual built form. But the materials, as you can see from the report, will be black timber and larch, and the roof will be an aluminium grey cover with under the link which I was referring to would be sedum covered. And so that is, as you say, Mr. Chairman, this was requested by yourself to update members as to where we are on the scheme.
Do you consider yourselves updated, members? Councillor Hayfield?
I think from what I've gathered, there's a general anticipation towards this in Causal. Seeing you brought it in front of us, I'm happy to move recommended be noted, but I would ask this question. I recall at the time being concerned about traffic and any impact on local road systems, either from Birmingham coming in to that top end, or that might impact on Causal. I'll be happy that necessary thoughts have been put in place to manage any traffic implications from this site.
I will look to Mr. Brown, but I think, if you like, that was all determined in principle. The subject matter of the original application, there's nothing changed as far as these amendments are concerned. So it's essentially it's as it was before.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. This only affects the appearance of the building, nothing else. The principle of the traffic arrangements was all agreed by the County Council's Highway Authority when it raised no objection.
I just felt I ought to ask something.
No,
You had this brought to board.
It might be helpful if you could circulate a reminder of what the county agreed for that, because there are a couple of substantial applications there.
Maybe be noted.
Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, Chair, thank you for bringing it to the board. Having sat through the planning meetings, the big planning meetings about the site, it really is a cutting edge piece of design which brings almost futuristic buildings together with world-class technology. The applicant assured us. So good luck to them.
Thank you. Members, I do think this will be a very impressive development and a facility that an awful lot of areas don't have, and particularly with us being as landlocked as we are, it can be a great opportunity, I think, for local people. So I think it is still worthy of support. Councillor Durham.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that from my point of view, personally, I think that this represents an improvement on the original design in being able to see what is behind the building. Although, as it stood, you would be met by just sort of a blank wall, really. I think we should welcome the amount of work that's gone in to make this happen.
Thank you.
Concessions for pensioners, Chairman.
I can't wait to see you in your swimsuit.
Councillor April, there will be numerous opportunities to buy chips on site, I'm sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to say that in light of this, then we ought to get together and make a council surfing team then, aren't we? See who's done it. I'm sure the picture, the takeovers, that'll break the camera.
That's going down the road of, I can't remember, was it the Ladies Women's Institute who had a
calendar?
A calendar,
yeah. Yeah.
Councillor's calendar. I'm sure it would not sound. Is any other comments?
I'll give £5 not to buy it.
You're going to be front camera.
So I think Councillor Hayfield, you moved that the report was made.
Somewhere back in the day, yes. I didn't.
And I seconded it. All those in favour? Thank you very much. The next item of members is application 428 for the Square Causal. Mr. Brown, anything to add?
Just to run to the slides, Mr. Chairman, again, need to replicate what you have on papers in front of you. Square Lane is this road here, and the M6 motorway is just off the illustration that you have there. The red line, it shows you the extent of the land holding, and the existing development is here. The U shape here is the stables referred to, and the enlarge is that. And that's an aerial photograph. Again, the stables are here with the menage here. And you can see from the report, Mr. Chairman, that it's been quite a lengthy procedure in coming to this. The applicant has acquired more land. The building has been reduced in size, relocated and redesigned to such the extent now that we feel we can recommend approval. But you can see, Mr. Chairman, that there are still outstanding objections from local residents and from the parish council.
Any comments, members? I would say, having read a number of the objections and tried to understand the plans, I think personally I would benefit by a site visit to look at the site and the nature of it. So if you are happy to propose deferment for a site visit?
Yes, second that.
All those in favour? And any against? Thank you very much. So, members, we now move on to application 247 for the Elms Orstry Road, Wharton. We have a speaker, Mr. Tom Renwick. Mr. Renwick, I'm presuming that's you.
That's correct, yes.
Welcome to the Council House.
Thank you very much.
Before we invite you to speak, Mr. Brown will introduce his report. Mr. Brown.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just run through the slides. And again, these are all replicated from the papers that you have in front of you. The application site there is outlined in red. The arms, which is referred to, is this property here, and the conversions, which are referred to, are here. And it's at the northern end of Warden. The Osprey Lane goes round the bend there and up to Osprey. This is Gravel Lane, which is referred to in the report. That's the approved scheme. Again, the elms here and the conversions, which are here. The application, as you can see, is a variation of the original approval. We've got no issues with several of the variations. The one that's caused the problem in terms of the representations that we've received relates to these two properties here, which were approved as single-storey dwellings, and the proposal is to vary those to two-storey dwellings, and that's where the representations have really been received. So if I can go straight to this is what was approved. And this is the rear elevation of those two single-storey dwellings, which would face onto the existing conversions, existing residential development. And that is what is now proposed, the rear elevation here. And I have a plan which again is replicated for you in the report with the actual separation distances between these properties and the existing ones. That's 32, 32 and 29. And as the report indicates, that is in excess of what we would normally look at in terms of back-to-back rear elevations. And that what we normally look at is a guide of 22 to 23. So I'll leave it to that, Mr. Chairman. We're recommending approval as we feel that there are no residential adverse impacts on this that we could defend in an appeal situation.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Welcome to the meeting. Mr. Tobin will explain the rules for public speaking to you.
Yes, thanks.
Mr. Tobin.
Good evening. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm time speaking and not being rude. Welcome. In a moment, you're given 3 minutes in which to address the board. So I'll tell you when your 3 minutes commences. Then I'll give you a reminder when you have 1 minute left. And then if you're still speaking at the end of it, I'll tell you when your time is finished.
Okay, great. Right, would you like me to stand up or sit down and remain seated?
Can you what? Yeah, I mean, most people sit, but if you'd like to stand, you're
I'm happy to sit. It's my first time, so I'm not quite sure what it looks like.
We'll be gentle.
I do apologise for arriving late to the meeting. I'm so sorry about that.
Don't worry about that. You're on time for your spot. So
Your time starts.
Great. I thought, thank you very much for your time this evening. I thought that it would be worthwhile explaining the reasons why we made those changes. Essentially, since starting the site, given I'd introduce myself, I'm the owner of the dwelling, my name's Tom Reddick. So I own the land and I'm also building it myself. So effectively, since we gained planning permission and since we started some of the first groundworks on site, quite a few people have been walking down the gravel lane. We've received quite a bit of interest from locals, primarily locals, about what we're building. Quite a few people have been interested in buying a property, asking for plans, asking what kind of properties we're building. And the majority of people who have said that we're looking to buy, and this is what we're looking for, have been asking for 3 or 4 bed, small to medium sized houses. So we currently only have 2 houses that fit that criteria on the site. We have 2 3-bed detached dwellings at the front. The dwellings with the views of the paddock are quite large dwellings, so they don't really fit in with what the majority of locals had asked for and said that we're interested in buying. So we thought that since we hadn't had inquiries about the bungalows, single level dwellings, it would make sense to more likely suit local demand by changing those bungalows to 2-storey family houses. So that's the only reason really why we made the change. Completely selfish reasons, effectively. So with regards to why we think it's deemed acceptable, effectively, I'm sorry, your name's Mr. Brown. Yeah. Mr. Brown's explained that.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Generally accepted back-to-back distances between 21 and 23 metres. There are multiple examples within Wharton, both with older developments and newer developments, where the back-to-back distances are quite similar to that. Now, at Outline, I believe there was 25 metres back-to-back, in excess of what was recommended at the time of 22, 23. So we've tried to add as much onto that as possible. We've gone to, as you can see, a minimum of 30 up to 32 metres. So effectively, we feel that adding on almost 50% to the generally accepted rule should be deemed acceptable. Forgive me, I'm only reiterating what Mr. Brown has said, but that's effectively why we believe it's a fair proposal. So thank you very much for your time, and that's what I have to say really.
Thank you very much, and apologies for mispronouncing your name earlier on.
Oh, no problem, no problem.
Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? See, they are treating you very gently.
Appreciate that.
But thank you very much indeed. Members, any comments, proposals? Councillor Mrs. Humphries?
Just my area. So I was going to ask why the difference, because we're always told bungalows are needed.
Yes.
But you tell me nobody's sort of come near to you for any interest in bungalows?
We had one very loose interest, but not someone who came up and said, I'd like to buy a house in the area. This is what I'd like to buy. So yeah, I was surprised. I built a couple of developments now with bungalows because they are typically high demand. So that was the reason why I originally wanted to build bungalows on this site. But it has surprised me that it seems that people want something between 1,000 and 1,700 square feet seems to be what most people are interested in.
Family house.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks very much. Have you got anything?
No, all right, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Have you advertised for these two bungalows then?
No, we haven't. I found on previous occasions, if I try and sell the properties extremely early on, spend a lot of time entertaining questions, and it's quite a small percentage of people that actually go on to be interested in a plot. Also, it's quite hard to visualise a development when it's just a massive scaffolding and groundwork. So I like to put them on the market a bit later on in the build, so people get a feel for what the development's like.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? No? Oh, thank you very much indeed.
No problem. Thank you.
Members, proposal, question, speeches? Councillor Hatfield?
I'm happy to kick off, Chairman. Yeah. As a planning committee, we don't really like it when we give planning permission for something and then someone comes up and changes it. So I'm glad that the applicant has explained his thinking behind that. And I can see his point, and every area is going to require different types of housing, and perhaps what he's proposing now is what is required in the area. The local members may know better. But I'd be happy to move the recommendation for approval.
Councillor Derrick? Now you're going to think of something else to say. You can't say and me.
When I first saw this, my thoughts were exactly the same, really. But we're very unhappy about people coming back straight after getting planning permission.
Yes.
For an idea, for a plan, and then say, oh, well, I've changed my mind. So it's actually been quite refreshing to have you explain why you've done it and the thinking behind it. And I would be happy to second this. Normally, I would be very, very wary of supporting that recommendation. I really do we all get fed up with developers that come back and change their minds.
Yes, okay.
But I think in this case, I'd be happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Humphries?
I was about to say exactly the same as been said.
Councillor Filthy.
Just a small portion that maybe the people who like 3-bedroomed houses are walking by, whereas the people who would be interested in buying bungalows may access their housing needs through other means. So if it's all based on the hearsay of people walking past, that's not necessarily representative of the market. Whereas obviously the statistics that we've got on housing need are a more reliable statistic.
Any other comments, members? Please opposed? No, sorry, Councillor Watson.
Disagreeing with Councillor Gosling. There's lots of people walk by and say I would like that, but that's why if it was marketed correctly and properly, there probably would be still bungalows.
Members been proposed and seconded for approval. Can I see those in favour? Any against? Mr. Bank, you walked into the Dragon's Den and charmed them, so they're all happy and you get your consent.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Members, that's more or less the end of the agenda. I do have one thing that I'd like to, well, two things actually I'd like to say to you. The first one is I should have mentioned right at the beginning of the meeting that you all heard apologies from Councillor Moss. Sadly, Councillor Moss is in hospital, I believe, with a second stroke. I'm sure we all want to send him our very best wishes for a speedy recovery, which with your agreement, Mr. Tobin will be happy to do. And secondly, you remember at the end of, not I think the last meeting, but the one before, I can't remember because I'm getting old, we had a good old whinge about the county council, and they have responded and they'd like to come and talk to us. So sharpen your claws at 4:30 before the next planning meeting. I know members, you are increasingly uncomfortable with meetings before the planning meeting because it concertinas everything, but that's the time they have offered to us. Are you content with that?
I think more like 5:30 would be better.
I think they were assuming you'd have a lot to say to them, Councillor.
Yes.
Councillor Hickard.
Yes, absolutely. Grab them with both hands. I think it would help if we could sort of fix on some specific examples where we were unhappy, where we've got. Otherwise, it could just be a general bashing in the county council session, and it needs to be a bit more focused.
No, concentrate on what we're good at. Mr. Mack, I'm sorry, I should have said you're more than welcome to go and get on with your life. You don't have to listen to this. No. Have a good evening.
You could even watch it on the internet later.
Oh, yeah, go for the rerun. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, I was just going to propose that we came up with some questions that we could perhaps pose to them. So I'd be very interested to hear their response to Mr. Brown's perennial problem about the lateness of their responses to consultations and what can be done.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having spoken to Scott Tompkins, who will actually be attending along probably with Joe Archer, they were very keen to have an agenda rather than it be a wide-ranging discussion. So, if members are content, can I agree with the chairman and planning opposition spokesperson what that agenda might be, and send it down to them?
Members are malcontent, but on this occasion, yes.
We'll still have a week.
Can I ask a question about that? Are you considering it would all be about planning? I'm just thinking of an example of Wood End Lane in Forlongley at the moment, where there's a multiple speed limit. The same people are going to want to discuss that. Those people will, why are we doing 40, 50, 60, 40 along the road, which people are tearing along?
Yeah.
But those two people will make the decision to say, I'm going to leave it as it is. And I'm sure residents via the councillors would like to be able to answer that. Or are we going to keep it on planning?
The request, Mr. Chairman, is purely on planning and planning applications and their consultation responses. So that's what Mr. Tompkins is expecting.
But my colleague Slim Peg Hayfield will teach you how to get those questions in. Yeah. Oh, it's great. He just sits there having his own conversation.
Sorry.
Any other comment?
I agree with you.
Okay, so if you could all perhaps drop Mr. Brown an email because he gets lonely and he needs more inbox. and let him know what your questions and issues are. That would be helpful. Members, I think in terms of you've all collectively surpassed yourselves to show Councillor Mrs. Parker how well behaved and charming you all can be, and got it done in less than an hour. Members, well done. The chip shop is barely open, let alone closed. Thank you very much for your attendance. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.